Have you ever been the only person in the room who knew everyone was lying? Delilah Dawson lived that reality every single day. And on one gray Seattle morning, this shy girl who'd spent her entire life invisible was about to discover that sometimes the quietest voice carries the most power. The conference room sat high above the city, all glass walls and polished surfaces that reflected everything but revealed nothing. 12 executives circled the table in expensive suits, their faces professionally composed. At the head sat Asher Graham, 35, and already legendary for his ironclad rule data over feelings always. His divorce had taught him that people lie but numbers never do. Across from him stood Chelsea Brooks, head of strategy, delivering an expansion proposal with the kind of confidence that demanded applause. Her smile was perfect, her presentation flawless. But Delilah noticed what everyone else missed. The room had stopped breathing naturally. This heartwarming story begins in that moment of collective deception, when a shy girl sitting in the corner saw the truth nobody dared to speak. Delilah's hands rested motionless on her laptop. 27 years old, light brown hair pulled into a neat bun, wearing her usual minimalist gray cardigan. She wasn't supposed to speak at these meetings. Data analysts observed and reported later. They didn't interrupt. But Delilah possessed something rare. She could read the language everyone else ignored. Asher's knuckles had gone white against his pen. The CFO's eyes kept darting toward the exit. Chelsea's manicured hand trembled once barely visible, turning a page. Everyone smiled. Everyone nodded. But nobody trusted what was being said. That night, alone in her apartment, Delilah opened the anonymous feedback system and typed one sentence: "The room lacks psychological alignment." She never expected anyone to read it. What happened next would transform this inspirational journey from invisible analyst to the voice that changed everything. Asher Graham read every anonymous submission himself. After his wife's 2-year deception, he'd learned to look for truth in unexpected places. When Delilah's words appeared on his midnight screen, something shifted in his chest. Because he'd felt it too, that suffocating performance everyone had perfected. Someone else had been watching, someone quiet, someone he'd never really noticed. He pulled up the IP address, Building B, Floor 3, Station 47. He cross-referenced the chart. Delilah Dawson. He stared at her employee photo, then did something that would change both their lives. He scheduled a private meeting. But before that meeting could happen, Chelsea Brooks was already planning her next move. Because ambitious people always notice when someone invisible suddenly becomes visible. What happens when the person nobody sees becomes the only one who truly understands? Chelsea stood at her office window the next morning, watching Asher's assistant escort Delilah into the CEO's private office. Not the senior executives, not the department heads, the data analyst, the mouse who never spoke. Chelsea's perfectly manicured nails tapped her coffee cup as she timed it. 17 minutes. When Delilah emerged, clutching a folder like a shield, Chelsea intercepted her at the elevator. "Delilah, sweetheart." Her voice dripped false warmth. "I hope you're not wasting Mr. Graham's time with amateur psychology. This is a technology company, not a counseling center. We deal in hard metrics here, not feelings." Delilah's eyes met hers briefly. "He asked me to review some projections. That's all." The elevator doors closed, but both women knew it wasn't all. What Chelsea didn't know was that 3 months earlier she'd made a devastating error, a misplaced decimal in the Singapore expansion projection. $2.3 million off. The kind of mistake that ends careers. Delilah had caught it during a late-night audit. She could have reported it, watched Chelsea face consequences. Instead, she'd stayed until 3 in the morning, fixed everything, and resubmitted it under Chelsea's name. No announcement, no credit. Her mother, a surgical nurse for 37 years, had taught her that kindness doesn't need an audience. But kindness, Delilah was learning, could make you a target when the person you helped never knew you saved them. Over the next 2 weeks, Chelsea orchestrated a careful isolation campaign. Meeting invitations stopped arriving. Emails went unanswered. At team lunches, conversations would pause when Delilah approached, then shift direction once she sat down. The exclusion was surgical and devastatingly effective. Most people didn't notice, but Mr. Harold did. At 68, Harold had worked building security for 18 years. Most employees walked past without acknowledgement, but Harold had spent 23 years as a military personnel advisor before retiring here. He knew how to see the people everyone else overlooked. One evening, Harold appeared beside Delilah's cubicle as she packed her bag. "You're leaving earlier these days," he observed gently. "Work getting lighter or company getting heavier?" Delilah's hands stilled. She was too tired for polite lies. "I spoke up once," she said softly. "Now I'm learning that visibility isn't always welcome." Harold nodded slowly, reaching into his pocket. He withdrew an old fountain pen, its brass barrel etched with words. "Use it when truth feels heavy." "My lieutenant gave me this 42 years ago," Harold said. "I was 26, youngest advisor in my unit, terrified of saying the wrong thing. He told me something I've never forgotten: some battles aren't won with volume. They're won with one true sentence at exactly the right moment." Delilah took the pen, feeling its weight. What if speaking up just makes everything worse? Harold's smile held decades of wisdom. "Then you'll know you were in the wrong room. But something tells me you're exactly where you need to be. The question isn't whether you should speak. It's whether you'll forgive yourself if you don't." He touched his cap and walked away. That night, Delilah sat at her kitchen table, the pen beside her laptop, studying the company calendar. Major international meeting in 5 days, Mr. Tanaka from Tokyo, Chelsea leading, and Delilah wasn't even invited. She stared at the pen for a long time. Then she opened a new email to Asher. "Mr. Graham, I'd like to request permission to observe Thursday's client meeting. I believe my analytical background could provide valuable cultural context." 3 minutes of hovering before she pressed send. The response came at 11:47 p.m. One word: approved. Chelsea's fury when Delilah entered that conference room Thursday morning was palpable. Her smile stayed fixed, but her eyes went arctic. "How lovely. Our junior analyst joins us. Delilah, dear, please stay quiet unless you have something concrete to contribute. Our international guests appreciate professionalism." The implication hung heavy: you don't belong here. Delilah took the seat at the far end, the chair reserved for people present but unimportant. She said nothing. But her eyes never stopped moving, watching, reading, waiting for the moment she knew was coming. Sometimes the quietest preparation leads to the loudest impact. Mr. Tanaka arrived precisely at 9 with 2 associates. Delilah observed everything: his firm but brief handshake, his courteous, measured smile, the careful way he settled into his chair. 53, she estimated. Traditional values. He would respond to respect and partnership, poorly to aggression. Chelsea launched into her presentation with polished intensity. The proposal was bold, designed to project invincibility. She spoke of market dominance, crushing competitors, seizing opportunity. This partnership will position both companies as Pacific leaders. We're not just offering opportunity, we're offering the chance to be on the winning side before the war begins. Every word calculated to inspire confidence. But Delilah watched Mr. Tanaka's face begin to close. The shift was subtle. His shoulders drew back slightly. His hands, previously open on the table, folded together, creating a barrier. His associate glanced at him, twice a silent question. Chelsea, focused on her performance, never noticed she was losing the room. Asher noticed. His attention shifted from screen to client, brow furrowing, but he said nothing. This was Chelsea's meeting. 20 minutes in Chelsea made her final push. Mr. Tanaka, this partnership will make us unstoppable. We're asking you to recognize an opportunity you cannot afford to miss. The market waits for no one. She sat down, triumphant. The silence felt like held breath. Mr. Tanaka's face was professionally neutral. Too neutral. Delilah recognized that expression, someone preparing to say yes while meaning no, already composing tomorrow's polite rejection email. She glanced at Harold's pen in her pocket. Use it when truth feels heavy. The truth felt like a stone in her throat. Everyone waited for Mr. Tanaka to speak. He opened his mouth. Excuse me. Delilah's quiet voice carried like a bell in the silence. Every head turned. Chelsea's smile froze. I think there may be a misunderstanding in our messaging. She looked directly at Mr. Tanaka. You're not uncomfortable with the proposal itself. You're uncomfortable with how we're presenting it. With the tone. The room stopped breathing. Chelsea's face flushed. Delilah, I don't think... Let her finish. Asher's voice carried absolute authority. Go on. Delilah's heart hammered, but she'd already jumped. In Japanese business culture, partnership means equality and mutual respect. But our language has been about conquest and dominance. We've been talking to you like someone we're trying to defeat, not someone we want to stand beside. She paused, watching his face carefully. I think what we mean to say is that we see this as an opportunity to learn from each other, to create something neither could create alone, not to crush markets, but to serve them, to build value that helps people, your people and ours, together as equals. The silence stretched endlessly. Then Mr. Tanaka's hands slowly unfolded. He leaned back, and something genuine crossed his face. He smiled. Yes, that is what partnership means. That is what I came hoping to find. He looked at Asher. Your analyst understands what many executives never learn. Business is not war. It is relationship. If you remember this, we have much to discuss. The meeting continued 90 more minutes, but everything had changed. Chelsea struggled to regain control, but the conversation had shifted into something genuine and exploratory. By the time Mr. Tanaka stood to leave preliminary partnership, planning was approved. At the door, he paused, looking past Chelsea and Asher directly at Delilah. Thank you for your honesty, for your respect. Then he was gone. The room emptied quickly. Chelsea gathered materials with shaking hands. Other executives filed out, murmuring. Finally, only Asher and Delilah remained. He stood at the window, hands in pockets, looking at the city below. Kun, how did you know what he was thinking? Delilah closed her laptop slowly. Because I know what it feels like to be talked at instead of talked to feel conquered instead of understood. When you're invisible, you learn to see things others miss. Watching is all you can do. Asher turned. The professional armor he always wore had cracked. That submission about psychological alignment, I've read it 47 times. You saw something I've been ignoring for months. What's that? His voice dropped. That I've been so focused on never being fooled again that I stopped letting anyone close enough to tell me the truth. They stood in quiet understanding, two people who'd spent their lives watching from margins, finally seeing each other clearly. Then Asher's phone buzzed. The moment broke. We should get back to work. But as Delilah headed for the door, she heard him say quietly, almost like he didn't mean for her to hear, thank you.